Hey guys, it's Laurie of Laurie's Sewing, and I wanted to today start on the McCall's M5103 pattern. This view D right here will be attached to the Simplicity S9099 skirt portion. Strange, I know, but that's what I'm doing. But I wanted to maybe start a how to look at a pattern, how to read a pattern, and how to put a pattern together if you are a beginner. So we're going to start with this right here. This will be very, very user-friendly for someone who might be very new to sewing. And if you look at these shirt patterns and the views, the options that we have on this pattern, the first thing that I notice right away is because it's all one pattern, McCall's, I could take this little ruffly collar right here and I could put it with this long-sleeved shirt. I could take this sleeve and put it with this shirt. So I can change, I can add, I can make things different. If I wanted this sleeve on this little sleeve right here on this pattern, I can do that as well. So that's the first thing that you might want to notice when you're looking at a pattern. It can sometimes be a little overwhelming, and sometimes it's hard to think, what am I supposed to make all four? Or is this just the only way that I could make view D? I like the way the shirt looks, but I don't like the sleeve. Or I wanted to make this one without a sleeve. And yes, that's absolutely possible. So that's the first thing to notice. The other thing you might want to notice right away is the range of sizes that might be included in the envelope. Then flip this over and you will see on the flap your body measurements. Now that's sometimes true, but not all the time. These two happen to have that information on the flap. But you'll just look under body measurements and kind of check to see if this range of sizes is in this range of body sizes. We'll pull out the instructions and all of the pattern pieces. Pattern pieces come folded up, machine folded, factory folded, and they'll be all in one big sheet or two big sheets, and then you'll cut them apart on the size line that you need. I typically will cut them out on the last available size so that if I want to trace down to a smaller size, I can do that. If I cut it on the smaller size, I can't go back and add unless I make measurements and do it kind of a hard way. But on the back of your pattern envelope, it gives you a description. This is really good if you see this pattern somewhere and you want to find it. Let's say it was $16.25 and you thought to yourself, I wonder if I can find it for a little bit better price somewhere else. I just can't remember the pattern number. If you can kind of remember that it's this description, you know, a McCall's pattern, it was a Mrs. shirt in 2 lengths, you might be able to find it by doing a Google search. I have often found patterns that I wanted and I couldn't remember the number just by typing in a little bit of that description. And it tells you that the shirts have a band collar, they have side slits and front button closures. All of that is true. They are different in that A and B are above the hip length and the shirts C and D are below the hip length. Again, that is true. Then let's see, shirts C and D are below the hip length. I already said that. Shirt A is sleeveless with a front ruffle. Shirt B has 3/4 length sleeves. Shirt C has long sleeves, and shirt D has long sleeves which are gathered at the cuffs. And again, all of that is true. Then it will tell you suggested fabrics. These are suggestions. You can do this shirt in any fabric that you think you might be able to sew. If you are comfortable sewing the fabric, more than likely you can make the shirt. It may not look like these, but that's okay. This pattern suggests cotton, cotton blends, chambray, challis, eyelet, silk fail, lightweight denim. An additional fabric might be needed to match the stripes, the plaids, or a one-way design fabric. That will almost always be true if you have a pattern in your fabric that runs one direction. You don't want the flamingos, for example, to go up on this side and down on this side. You might. I don't know that that's something you really would want. Your sleeves will have to also follow, and that can sometimes cut into your yardage when you have to move your pattern pieces around differently. This is a plaid, window pane plaid on this particular shirt, and you would want those to match on the side, so you'd have to be very careful cutting that out, and that's true of different points on the shirt. So buy extra yardage, and by that I mean you might need a quarter to a half of another yard. Then the sizes are listed, and then it's going to tell you how much fabric you're going to need for each of those sizes. And if you need additional items like fusible interfacing, it will also be listed. So for shirt A, we'll just go size 14, wants 1 5/8 of a yard of fabric if it's 45 inches wide. If your fabric is 60 inches wide, like a chambray might be, you will need 1.5 yards. And then for fusible interfacing for view A and B, if it's 22 inches, you will need 3/4 of a yard. If it's 45 inches, you will need 3/8 of a yard, and so forth and so on in here. So you just find your size, look down below, get the fabric and the interfacing, and at this point we don't really see any of the other notions that are required until we get to here. And notions for this are all views require 5/8 inch buttons, 6 for A and B, and 7 for C, and 9 for D. So the view I am making would require 9 buttons. However, I am going to be cutting this shirt at about here. I don't pay attention to this top ink line right here. That one should be heat erased off. It's more than likely going to be this one here. So I won't need all of those 9 buttons for view D. And then your finished garment measurements. This includes ease. So ease is the ability to move around in your clothes. There needs to be a little bit of movement. If you've ever put on a shirt and the sleeves are so tight you can't lift your arms up, that's because there is a lack of ease in the pattern and the sewing. Then you have what it looks like from the front and what it looks like from the back. The first thing I notice on the back is there's not a yoke on the back of these. Most shirts will often have a yoke that goes across the back. This is actually a preferred fit for me. I like that style. Okay, now we can go to this. This is our 2 instruction sheets. Again, we're going to see the drawing of each of the patterns, so it'll be the fronts and the backs. And then below that, we have how many pattern pieces are included in this envelope. And it looks like there are 10. This is heat erase ink. It's a friction clicker. In fact, let's just see, did I use erasable ink? Where'd it go? Oh. No. So I just erased that top line that I drew. That's why I like erasable ink. It's lovely. Okay. So what I plan to do is check or circle each of these pieces that I need. This is the English language side right here, and this is often either French or Spanish on this side. So I will be looking at this. I know that for my purposes, for view D, I'm going to need the front piece, the front band, the back, the collar, the sleeve, the placket, and the cuff. So I need piece number 1, piece number 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, and 10. That helps me, if I write these down, that helps me only if I've already started sewing and I'm missing a piece. It's a little bit more complicated for me to go back and look for the layout, which is right here. I've got these pieces are all listed up here, but I find it much easier just to go back to this page and look at this right here. Okay, now often up here you will also have sewing instructions, and it tells you exactly what they are. All you have to do is read these. This is the pattern markings. So when you get to your pattern pieces, let's just take one. Like I said, I've not pressed these yet, but we'll take the little collar piece, okay? Now I can see the collar piece has a line with an arrow on it. It has this number. It has a bunch of instructions here. It has a center line. It has these little triangles. It has these little X's and circles. And if I'm just starting out, I'm probably overwhelmed with what in the world does this all mean? So those pattern markings will be explained in this section of the instructions. Okay, then there's other information. It tells you how to adjust the pattern, if you want it longer, if you want it shorter. There's an easy rule guide. Sometimes on the pattern pieces, if it's not there, you can definitely lengthen or shorten your pattern piece as needed, either by using this method or just on the lower edge of the pattern. Go ahead, wash your fabric. It tells you to do that. It tells you to circle your layout. We don't have to for view D because it is on the other side, so we don't need to separate it from the other ones. And by layout, this is the layout. It tells you how to lay out your pattern pieces on your fabric. So it shows you how to fold your fabric and then where to put the pattern pieces before you cut out your pattern. It tells you what to do if you have a fabric that has a nap. And fabric with nap is fabric like corduroy, that when you brush it one way, it has a certain look, and when you brush it back the opposite direction, it looks very different. Like velvet would be a fabric with nap. Okay, now you're going to mark. The pattern pieces will have markings on them. You need to mark your fabric with following the guide on the pattern piece, and make sure that you do that accurately. Cutting is more important than sewing. When you're making something to wear, cutout is far more important than sewing. Once you've cut the fabric, it's cut. Once you've sewn the fabric, you can remove the stitches and do it again. Okay, so these are our, and this is the alternate language right here. So that's why I skipped this big swath. It's the same information, just in a different language. Okay, so the cutting layouts are going to explain to us right here If you see down in the cutting layout a blank, just blank with nothing on it, that denotes the right side of the pattern. If you see a little bit of, a whole bunch of dots, I guess. Let me pull this up where you can see it a little bit better. Are obviously the wrong side of the pattern, and this is the right side of the fabric, that grayed out area, and this is the wrong side of the fabric. So when you transfer from using pattern to using fabric, your markings might be duplicated, but you'll understand that you're now working with the fabric. We're not doing view A, we're not doing view B, and we are not doing view C. We are doing view D right here. So this shows us with 45-inch wide fabric, with or without a dap, how to fold it. So this is the folded section right here. So for piece number 1 and piece number 4, and those are the front of the shirt and the back of the shirt, we cut out with our fabric folded, right sides together. We're going to end up cutting out one back on the fold. So we cut it out on the fold, and then it opens up, and we have just one back piece. The front, of course, we need two, a left and a right. Then we open up the rest of our fabric so that it's face up. This is the right side of the fabric right here. And we're going to cut out 2 sleeves and a collar, and yeah, there's the collar. We need 2 collars, we need 2 cuffs, and we need 2 bands, I believe. Piece number 3 is the front band, yes. Okay. And then if you are using 60-inch wide fabric, this is the layout for 60-inch with or without nap. All the pieces are there for size 6 through 16. And then down at the bottom, it talks about our interfacing. And that, I believe, is all the same. You will have your interfacing. The reason for that is you can basically build your interfacing with little tiny pieces and that you're going to iron on. You might not have one whole piece that you can cut all of this out of, and you're going to be doing a little bit for a cuff off of this piece and a little bit for, you know, the collar over here on this other piece over there. So you just have several bits and bobs of interfacing that you just press to the pieces, and that is why there's not typically a layout for that. And then it tells you what you need to put this on. So that's kind of the key information. Each of the pattern pieces will also give you that little hint as well. Okay, so then we move on to sewing information fabric key. So this is the right side of the fabric, wrong side of the fabric. Now the dots in that circle become the interfacing. And then we also have the right side of the lining and the wrong side of the lining. These techniques right here. So this is trimming the enclosed seam into layers. It's also called grading. This is trimming the corners. This is to notch outer curves, and this is to clip inner curves. All of those are basically required to make your garment look professional. Even if you're a beginner, don't skip those steps. They're very important. It goes along with the cutout being the most important thing. Okay, then we have the glossary of terms that may or may not be used in the instructions, and those are ease stitch, edge stitch, finish stitch, gather, narrow hem, reinforce, slip stitch, and stay stitch. And at long last, we come to the sewing directions, and they are for all views, A through D. We are going to start with the front, and they're going to use view B as the illustrated shirt all the way through unless otherwise indicated. And the reason they say that is view B is pretty generic. If we look at view B, it's fairly generic. When we get to the section with putting this piece together, there will be information about how to add the ruffle and how to change the sleeves, and that's basically it. It's going to tell us to just go ahead and make a dart in the front. There are markings on the pattern pieces, and how to make the ruffle for view A, and that's how they switch that up. So it says view B will be illustrated unless otherwise indicated, right here, but then down here it says view A ruffle. So it's explaining how to make the ruffle, and then as we go along there'll be small changes like that. And we make sure that we are looking at page 3 of 4. Make sure that it's page 3. You don't want to go from page 2 to page 4 and do something before you're supposed to. In other words, the last thing is to make the buttonholes. We don't want to do that. We've got a lot more sewing to do before we're making buttonholes. So as you can see, each of these is going to tell us what to do step by step. And then do the buttonholes, and then we're done. These instructions here are all the instructions written in a different language. Okay. Now I do recommend, for a professional finish, that you press your pattern pieces. You want all the wrinkles out, and use a dry iron. You don't want to use a wet iron. The moisture from a wet, steamy iron can damage your pattern pieces. So just use dry heat and press them out. They will be staticky, they will be sticky, they will want to cling to your arm. They're ridiculous, but it's important that you do it. So I will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Okay. Now I'm going to double check and see if that's what I actually need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. Okay. But as you can see, these are slightly wrinkled, and if I lay them on my fabric, I might not get an accurate placement. So I need to make sure that they're flat and that the fabric will be cut correctly. And that is the next step. Unfortunately for me, I need to go to the other room to cut out my fabric because I don't have enough room here. But it is basically just, for me, because I'm using a solid fabric, I don't have to worry about a pattern. I don't have to worry about a nap. I can just do the fabric, lay it out the way they show, put my pattern pieces down, cut them out, and then I will be ready to stitch.